Welcome back to our tour of Matilda. We'll go into the turret. Now, of course, it's the whole purpose of the tank is the weapon system, the 40mm gun and the coaxial machine gun. Two hatches at the top. Loader's hatch is rectangular and small. The TC's hatch is a little bit larger, and you'll see that it's actually, the hatches are held up with pistons, which make opening the hatch a very, very simple affair. Anyway, in I get, and let's see how well I fit, which probably isn't very well at all. TC's cupola seems to have a lock here to rotate around. Pull it out and you should be able to swing. Of course, it's not swinging for me. There we go. Simple as. So in addition to being able to rotate the cupola, the periscope inside the forward hatch is also rotating 360 degrees and adjustable in elevation. Nothing else on the outside of any note. Spotlight for itself. Little hooks for lifting up the cupola is required. To the front, gunner's primary sight. Actually, this is as far down as I can go sitting down on the commander's seat. I hope it moves. So now I've dropped down into the turret. This is where things start getting perhaps a little bit cozy. I'm standing on the turret floor, and as you can see, my head is already above the height of the hatch. Now granted, I'm a little bit taller than the typical tanker at the time. The commander's seat that I was sitting on with my head out folds up out of the way once you're inside, and there is a small amount, it looks like about 4 inches of elevation adjustment, and there is a platform for the TC to stand on when he's buttoned up, and I can only assume that the platform is it looks to be about 3 inches high, and it's to bring the typical tanker of the era up to sufficient height that he can look out the periscope. The other toy he has is the wireless set, the radio to most people today, and it's number 11 was the original one that came in the Matilda, and with that you had one-way intercom system. You could radio other people, and you could talk to your crew. Your crew could not talk back, which probably was an advantage to some commanders. Later on, the number 19, which was a very common radio set for the British forces by the end of the war, came along, and this allowed two-way communication, and also, of course, communication with other tanks. And there was an intercom box located to his left shoulder that he could select various functions. Nothing else in the commander's seat. Next step is to go forward into the gunner. Come forward into the gunner seat. He's of course seated in front of the commander, and again, cozy. It looks like the seat does have an adjustable height by way of a foot pedal, however, it appears not to be working, so I'm stuck at the up position. Traverse has two forms, power or manual. Well, manual is simple. There's a hand crank, and you pull in the grip and you crank one way or the other, just like every other hand crank you'd ever see on a tank. At least most of them. He also has a power traverse option. That is run when the engine's running. It's a pneumatic system, and he will select manual or power, and he's got a spade grip. He pulls in to release the lock, and then he starts rotating the handle left or right. He's got about 5 degrees of free play before he starts to traverse. The maximum speed is 20 degrees a second, giving you a full rotation in 18 seconds. The minimum speed is 1/4 of a degree per second, which will take you quite a while to get around. If you wanted to use manual power traverse, you'd have to pump up the recuperator a little bit. And an interesting feature is that there is actually a lock function that you can lock the traverse in a position. So what you can do is, let's say your tank is hitting the bail out. Before the gunner gets out, he rotates the turret, he turns the handle. If the engine is running or not, he turns the handle and he starts to get out. If the engine is not running and the turret is not in the correct position for the driver to be able to get out, what the driver can then do is he can start the engine. Because the power traverse is locked to one side, the turret will spin, and then when the turret is clear, the driver turns off the engine, and then he can get out. Which seems a little convoluted. These days what you do is you just make sure that you turn the turret yourself before you get out, so that the driver has the ability to escape. Elevation is perhaps a little bit simpler. There is, to the left here, a elevation lock, for lack of a better term. Let's pull it out here, and that should free up the gun. Simple as. There is no elevation gearing. This is a shoulder pad. You put your shoulder to the gun, put your head to the side, and you simply do this to aim in elevation. Combine that with your power or manual traverse, and this is how you aim. The result of this was he actually had a sort of a form of rudimentary gun stabilization. The gunner could, because it's so well balanced, I mean, I'm basically using, I was going to say using a finger, but I'm not. But it's not taking me very much effort to do this at all. As the tank is bouncing over the hills, or at least the bumps, the gunner has the ability to generally keep the target in his sights. Now, it's not full stabilization, he's not going to be expected to hit anything at long range, but in close quarters he actually has a reasonable chance of hitting something on the move, something which a geared gun could not do. Of course, as guns got bigger and bigger, you could no longer do the shoulder mounted system. After you got past the 6-pounder, that was about as far as you could go. The gun itself is a 2-pounder, it's a 40mm. 2-pounder because that's the weight of the shot. The British, of course, had their own unique system. This was, at the time, one of the best anti-tank guns you could find. You can make an argument for the Italian 47. But you can see the breech, it's a 40mm, it's not a big shell. Now here's the other problem, is that the only thing this thing fired was AP. There was a close support version with a low velocity 3-inch gun, however that only fired smoke. It wasn't that there was no HE round for the 40mm, but it generally was not issued to tankers. Apparently there was at least I've heard, that lobbing high explosive shells from a gun is the job of artillery. So the anti-tank gun, the towed 2-pounders, which were manned by the artillery, they got the high explosive shells, but the infantry support tank that was supposed to shoot up infantry and infantry targets was not given anything other than AP, so you're shooting basically very, very large bullets at people. The only thing it would be really useful for is if you met a tank, which in fairness Matilda was pretty good at dealing with, although it wasn't primarily the function. To the right is a beast of machine gun, 7.92, again the bizarre British caliber, which was actually from Eastern Europe, and the Germans used it as well. RTR used their 7.92 all the way through the war. Elevation and depression on this thing is pretty ridiculous. I can't elevate as much as I'd want to because my leg is in the way, but if I look how far this depresses, it goes pretty much to a full 18 degrees, and so you can really abuse some hills on this one, or put 40mm rounds into very, very close infantry targets. It has this Unity periscope here just for general observation, again rotatable and adjusting elevation. To aim, he has a by 1.9 telescope with the simplest reticle you'll ever see. It's a cross with a couple of notches for right and left, but no elevation graduations whatsoever, so you're basically firing bursts on target. You fire a shot, see where the puff of dirt is, if you can see a 40mm puff of dirt, and then you fire again. To fire, he has 2 pistol grips for his right hand, so his left hand of course is on traverse, right hand is on pistol grip, the left one for the main gun, which is a simple mechanical lever which comes up here to the firing system, and one for the coaxial machine gun on the right, which again is a mechanical cable. He squeezes his palm grip or his trigger, and that will set off the 7.92. So I'll just lock this back into place. There we go, nice and secure.